Let's get on with it.
Many of you know probably how to make basic Revit families, perhaps to the same level as you would know how to make AutoCAD blocks. And whilst they basically work, they may not work as well as you'd like. In this webinar, I'm going to share some top tips for creating effective families. For example, making a family that knows how to snap to its neighboring parts, for example, or to how to include extra detail that only appears in a plan or elevation view, and much, much more. This is for Revit users that have a basic knowledge and would like to take their families up to the next level. Hi, my name's Greg Benton-Shettle. I'm one of the many Autodesk certified instructors here at Greytech, and I've been delivering training courses now for well over 10 years, and prior to that I ran a commercial drawing office where we would undertake projects for architects, structural steel, interior designers, naval architecture, product design, and that would include producing technical drawings as well as 3D animations and stills for presentation purposes as well. So let's have a look at the agenda for what we're going to be looking at today. Now, first of all, we'll take a look at how to set out your Revit model itself, the actual family inside of to get the best orientation. We're then going to look at how you can actually change the insertion origin point if you need to. And then we're going to look at something called weak and strong references. Then we'll explore how we can add specific 2D line work in plan views, for example, or elevations. We're going to be looking at some visibility settings, and then we'll see how time goes on, and I've got a whole bunch of bonus tips for you as well. Okay, so let's snap on over to the live demo. So here we are in Revit, of course, and when you're creating a new family, you would click on New here. My apologies. You click on New here where it says Families. And in here we've got a huge variety of different templates that you could be using. Now, just to start with, I'm going to be using just a basic template, and I'm going to be opening up a file in a moment which is based on this metric generic template. Okay, the metric generic template, this one here. So in your templates, when you open up a family, most of the families you'll be presented with this ref level view. Okay, ref level, which is, if we take a look over in the project browser, we can see that the ref level view is a floor plan. Now, just a quick note about these: unlike projects, when you use a specific family, you cannot add any additional ref levels. So regarding any details for heights and additional height settings, we use reference planes for all of those. Okay, little tip here. If most of what you're going to be creating is going to be based on the floor plans, in the project browser, you've got ceiling plans as well. I recommend that you minimize this ceiling plans option here, just in case you open up this ref level for ceiling, which is a reflected ceiling plan, by mistake. It's a very easy but frustrating mistake to make. So we're in the ref level. In front of us we have a drawing. Now, I've actually just added a couple of basic solids in here. I want to talk about these reference planes. Okay. Hovering over this reveals a tooltip which says reference plane center, front, back. And this reference plane here says center, left, right. So we're in a plan view, and the question I want to pose at the moment is, well, considering this center front back, which side is the front and which side is the back? Now, if you're drawing in plan, very often you'll have, it's natural for us to draw the back above the line and the front below the line, or consider that this would be the front and this would be the back. And just to highlight this, what I will do is open up some other views, such as the 3D view 1, which is the 3D view. So, we go to top. Here we are. So here we are, we can see the same setup. I'll just do a window tile here. Zoom all. Okay. So here's the 3D view, here's the plan view. So you can see what you're looking at. Now, if I spin this around, we can indeed see that according to the template, this side here, down here, is definitely the front. Okay, and that is the back. And if we bring it around to a left view, that confirms it. So now we're looking on the left side. So this means that this is the front and this is the back. So that is how the templates are laid out. However, when it comes to creating families, I'm going to recommend that you actually draw it the opposite way round. Now, why on earth would I recommend that? I want you to consider that this side, the top above the center reference, is actually the front. Consider this to be the front. Let me demonstrate why. I'm just going to close this file down. And I'm going to open up this example, go to the ref level. Okay, so here's a basic representation of a cupboard, and there's the doors. I'll do a quick, let's just tile the views again so we can see what we're doing. So as you can see on the view cube, it clearly says front, and I've drawn doors at the front. And that seems logical. However, we're going to just start up a quick project. So I'm going to go File, New, Project. I'm simply going to be using the default architectural template here. So here it is. Just for placement purposes, I'll drop a wall in here. Okay, now let's load this family, which has been drawn the way you would expect it. Let's load it into the project and see what happens. I'll click on Load into Project. And obviously, I can position this somewhere. Now, I'm having a problem putting the back of the unit up against the wall. So there's an issue that needs to be resolved. You know, it's happy to snap there, but of course that's pretty useless. But here's the thing. Let's take a look at the preview in the Properties palette. Look at this. It's the wrong way round. So you can't actually tell, is this just a door cupboard? Is it got drawers in it? You cannot see the front. And this is because it's been automatically generated, and they generate, for some bizarre reason, the wrong way round. So my recommendation is that we actually draw our families in the family template itself, effectively the wrong way round, to get something useful. Okay, so let's try this again. I am going to do an undo to remove this from the project. Then we'll go back and let's fix this, and then so we can actually see the difference. Now I'm going to rotate this. I'll have to do a little bit of fixing. It won't do everything exactly the way that I want it to. So the doors are still being shown down here, so I just need to fix that. If you have a look in the 3D view, see what's going on. See all this flashing? That means we've got faces of solids that are similar, that are in the same place. Okay, they're occupying the same space. So I'm going to select, use my tab key here. I'm going to select this item, and I need to delete this one. And similarly, I'm going to select that one and delete it. When I did the rotate, okay, it was actually, when you look at this, rotate, it was on copy. And believe it or not, that was actually on purpose, because sometimes when you rotate things, you may get an error message where things are locked. So I was able to produce a copy in this fashion. So just select these items and delete them. So, and we have a duplicate in here as well. I'll delete that one. And got a duplicate of the baseboard as well. Yeah, right. So now we have, and finally, I'm just going to pull this back. So, remove constraints. So, now you can see in the 3D view, according to the 3D view, this is the front, and this is the back. Now, you may mentally struggle with this particular aspect. So what you could actually do is, if I click on the right, up on the view cube and do a right click, I can say, set front view to back. Yes, and now this does say front. But keep in mind that all of the elevations are also all the wrong way round as well. So the back is still looking at the, going to be looking at our model front, and so on and so forth. But of course you could rename those. I've got so used to working in this fashion that it doesn't bother me. And also, when we're working with a family, reality is that most of the time we are working in a wireframe mode. Okay, so from the visual style settings, then typically set to wireframe, so that you can see everything anyway that you're going to be manipulating to form your family. Right, I am going to do a save as here. Save as family. This one corrected. Now, it's the other way round. Okay, so just to confirm, the doors are in that back area, because this is going to be my front. Load into the project. And look at the preview. It's now in a useful orientation. You can see exactly what you're getting. So this rule of building your elements front to back will be true for most of the Revit family templates that you work with. Of course, it's always a good idea when you start off a new family, do a quick test. Just in case, if you're using one of the more specialized versions, do a quick test, do a simple extrusion, see where things are lining up, load it into the project and test it. Just make sure that the preview you're getting here is going to be a useful one. There we are. Now, of course, I can flip this and look, like it also means that I can snap this against that wall quite nicely. There we are. There is our top tip, our number one tip when you're building your families, is sorting out the orientation. Now then, let's have a look at something called the origin, the insertion point. Now, when we're back in the family here, if I select this line, we can take a look over in the properties palette, and one of the parameters that's available in the properties palette here says defines origin, and you can see that there's a tick here. So there'll be one for the horizontal line and one for the vertical line, or the X and the Y line if you like. And so if I select this one as well, defines origin. Now, it is possible with certain families that you create, it could be that whilst you build them in this fashion, the insertion point, you may want it to be different. So how could we set a different insertion point? Well, it's all about the reference planes. So over here, we go to reference plane. And I'm just going to draw a reference plane down here. And now, if I select this one, you can see in the properties palette over here, defines origin, there's no tick. I'll put a tick in here. Now, there can only ever be 2 ticks. So what I will find, if I now click on the center one, you'll see that the defines origin here is now unticked. Okay. So let's see with this new corner, so now it's going to be at the corner of this unit. Let's see how that changes. I'll do a quick save. I'll load it into the project, overwrite the existing version, and did you see them move? And that's because obviously the origin point has moved. And if I click on our component tool, you can see now that my insertion is based on a corner, like so. So you can define your own origin and your own insertion point. Back in the family. Now I'm actually going to set the middle one back to being the origin. We put a tick back in here to define the origin. However, this reference plane, I will keep it. I'm just going to extend it slightly. And then I'm going to pop another reference plane in. When you're creating families, it is all about the reference planes. It really is. Like so. And like so. So this now defines the origin. And I'm going to bring this back in to the model. So quick save and load into project. We'll overwrite. Things have moved around. Now, when you're doing your layouts, of course, you want to be able to you want your units, your pieces of equipment, your furniture, whatever it may be, to be able to snap easily. When we move one of these, of course, you can see that you can line it up against this wall very easily. However, when I want to put these next to each other, well, look, it's kind of floating around. I'll zoom in here. It really is just, there's no real definite snap. And if this particular cupboard had like walls to it internally, there'd be reference planes on the inside, and you could actually snap to those. So how can you make this easily snappable? When I say easily snappable, consider when I bring this to the wall, you get a highlighted line. It snaps. It's very obvious. So how do we make this happen for our sides? So here we are back in the family. Now, if we select, say, the center front back, and we have a look in the properties, I'm going to highlight this parameter here. Now, the parameter name is a bit odd. It says is reference. It's programming speak, unfortunately, but think of it as a question. Is it a reference? And look, if this knows that it is a reference, and it knows what its purpose is, it's center, front, back. It knows what its purpose is, and that's why we get that preview of a highlighted line when you offer the back of our unit up to an element. We want the same activity going on when you try to bring them side to side, and here's how you do it. If we select this reference plane, let's have a look at that same is reference. Look at that. It's a weak reference, right? It's a weak reference. And of course, we really don't want these to be weak references. So what's the opposite of weak? Let's click in here. A drop down is presented. Look, strong. Now you could be really specific if you need to be to say whether it's going to be left or right. Keep in mind though, where we're drawing this round the wrong way, whilst we're viewing this, this reference plane that as we view it is on the right, that's actually the left side of the cabinet. Okay, so you can use these left and right, but many times you don't need to do that. You can just make it a strong reference. I'll do exactly the same on the opposite side. I'll change it from a weak reference to a strong reference. Save the file, load it back in, and let's see how it behaves now. So here we are back in the family, back in the project. Click on here, now watch. Yes, we get this line, but now watch. Ta-da! You can now make sure that things snap. Now, a lot of people miss out this step, and obviously it's frustrating. And you may find that even some of the standard families that you use, perhaps the ones that come with Revit, some of those actually miss this particular setting. So, when you're thinking about placement reference lines, remember, is it a good reference? Is it weak or is it strong? Now, just another little note just to finish off this weak and strong reference section is if I have another reference plane in here, and I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut of RP. Now, if I had another reference plane, perhaps there was one in here indicating the side of this cabinet, the internal wall thickness, for example. This comes in and it is a weak reference. Now, when you place it, Revit will actually have the capacity to pick up on this internal one. And when if you're rushing around trying to populate your project, you may accidentally, rather than picking up on the edge, you might pick up on this one because it has got some strength. It's a weak strength, but it has got some strength. So if you have nearby reference planes, and you definitely do not want Revit to consider using these for placement purposes, what you can actually do over in the is reference area, you can specify, if you scroll up to the top, you can specify that it is definitely not a reference. Okay, so there will be occasions if you have a lot of reference planes quite close together, you may want to use not a reference, so that when you're placing the model in your project, it ignores those specific reference plane. There we are. Okay, what next? When we look at our family, when we're using it, we know that we've got some doors here. There could be that there's some door handles on there, or maybe they are recessed door handles and you wouldn't be able to see them. Also, as these are cupboards, it could well be that you may want to indicate the movement, that they've got obviously a door swing to them. So we can actually model in some door swings for this particular cupboard. I'm just going to check to see what size I've created these at. Okay, and let's go back to, I'm in the ref level. Let's find my dimensioning tool. So this is 800 wide. Just wanted to double check, see what size I'd actually made this. Okay, so we'll have a couple of doors. So how can we represent these just in 2D? Well, let's have a look. Now, to add any 2D elements in your family, up on the ribbon, we come on over to the Annotate tab. And to add 2D lines, the line work is called Symbolic line work. And you can use this to add extra detail that either you only want to see in a certain view, or to add extra specific detail that you may need. Maybe extra detail for kind of construction purposes that you don't necessarily need to model up, but you want to be able to have view on it for detailing. So we use symbolic line work. Now in here, we have, over here you've got subcategory. Subcategory means line types. Okay, so here we can choose specific line types. So first of all, I want to indicate the actual door itself, so we can draw some doors in, and we can come up to furniture cut. So you've got cut and you've got projection. There's some subtleties in here, but basically in a plan view is a cut view. It's a horizontal section, so therefore it's a cut view. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one. You have all of the drawing tools available, so you can draw whatever you need to. And I'm going to indicate that we've got a door swing in here. And for cupboards, I don't like to give them a big swing. I just like to give them a narrow indication. You know, perhaps something around about 12 degrees, something of that nature. If I want to set this to be more specific, as opposed to doing it by eye, what I can do is go and find my dimensioning tools. I could use an angle. I could pick here and here, place a dimension, select the line, and then you can see that your dimension that you've just added has become editable. Set this to specifically 12 degrees. I'm just doing that for placement, so I will be deleting this. Okay, so there's my door swing. If I wanted to add more detail to this, of course, I could always go back to the symbolic line work. If I wanted to give it a panel width, then obviously I could do so if I needed to. You know, I wanted to actually show it with a panel width. In fact, I think I will, considering what's coming up. I'm going to say this is going to be 15 millimeters. And of course, it looks like I've done this as a different thickness, but I'm going to bring that down there. Pull this in like so. Do a quick measure. Now, okay, I made that 20 mil. I'm just going to drag this out 20. At 20. There we are. Now, obviously, I need to also drag this back. Now, ordinarily, I would do that far more precisely, but you get the idea. So I can show this as a door. And then I want to show the actual door swing. So again, it's back on the symbolic lines. And I'm going to be using this hidden line one here. And what I want, of course, is a arc. Do an arc from here. Here. And draw that little arc in. So we'll then mirror this across. Deselect that extrusion, and we'll use our mirror tool. Okay. Let's save the file and let's see how that looks in the actual project. We'll overwrite the existing. There we are. So now we can see that we've definitely got two doors here, and we can see that it aids to our presentation. However, we may find that we don't want to actually, because we've drawn the doors in here, we don't want to see the doors that are closed. So that brings us nicely onto our next topic, which is visibility settings. Visibility settings. So back in the model, in the family. Now, if I select these, in fact, I can select both of these doors by holding the control key down. When I've selected elements of the same type, meaning they're both extrusions. Okay, if one was an extrusion and one was a sweep, I wouldn't be able to do this. You can only use this particular tool when you're selecting the same type of solid element, or even 2D element for that matter. Up here, you should find on the Modifier ribbon Visibility Settings. I'm going to click in here. And I'm going to untick Plan. So in a plan view, those 3D doors will not show. Now be aware that in some other families, you may also need to untick this bottom option here as well. Okay, so if this one is available, use it. Okay, so you want to untick these two. And we do okay. So let's see what effect that does. Control save, load into project, overwrite the existing. I've still got some line work in here for some reason, but it is not the doors. So that's something else in my model that's occurring. Let's have a quick look. I'm going to pop over to a left view. Ah, there it is. There's the problem. I'm just going to drag this back. So that's what we were seeing. This little plinth area down here. That's what we were seeing. And I'll do a quick load, overwrite. Save it. So they still appear to be there. In fact, it's not actually the doors, it's the drawers underneath. So I actually need to make sure that I am picking the drawers underneath. So if I use my tab key here, right, there's one of them. Perhaps if I go to a front view, it might be easier. I'm going to select this extrusion and then this extrusion. Go to visibility settings. So you see, you don't have to be in a plan view to do this. And very often you're going to find it's easier to pick specific elements within inside of your family in different views so you can get to them more easily. So I'm going to untick the plan view there. Let's try that again. I'll do a save, load into project, overwrite. There we are. And so now we can see that I've got a representation of these, and it also lets me know that I need to do a slight tweak on these door swings to bring them back, bring the arc line back all the way so that it looks the way that you should. So there's visibility settings so that you can decide what you do and what you don't see in any specific view. Now, the next thing is very often, you know, if I bring, just for demonstration purposes, let's think about level of detail. If I bring a door into a view, I'm going to load standard door. So when we look at this door, subject to level of detail, so down on the command line, yeah, I put this to coarse, got a very simple representation of the door. If we go to medium, we get a little bit more detail in there. We've now got the door panel thicknesses and also the door liner thickness as well. And then when we go to fine, the architraves come in as well. Now, these level of details, these coarse, medium and fine settings, they're not some magic broad Revit setting. The coarse, medium and fine, what gets displayed at any particular level of detail is down to the individual family, and we define what we see at those different levels. Okay, so let's see how we can set up our coarse, medium and fine levels of detail. So back in our family, back in here. Now let's consider the symbolic lines we've done for the doors. Now, just before I do that, I'm going to redo that arc because Wait a minute. Go. Symbolic line. And I want to go from here to here. Now when I do doors properly, I don't ever have my doors actually butted up like this. There's always a gap in between them because otherwise they don't physically open. And it causes us some problems, as you can see here. They're not great, but you get the idea. Now, let's change the level of detail that we get on the actual door itself. I'm going to go hover, tab, see if I can pick up this whole chain. I'll do that. So I'm going to pick this line and this line, this line, this line. This is representing the door thickness, yeah? And then that line and that line. Now, in a coarse level of detail, I really do not want to be seeing the thickness of these door panels. So again, we come up and find, on the ribbon, we find our visibility settings, okay? And look, here we are, coarse, medium, and fine. So this is where you define what you see at any given level, okay? So I'm going to say, well, I don't want to see these at coarse, but maybe I will see the thickness at medium and fine. We do okay. Right, save the file. We'll load that into the project, overwrite, and let's see how it works. So down on the command line, our level of detail, I'm going to change this back to coarse. There we are. And now you can see that we've only got the simple line work showing. And it also reveals that the way that I've drawn these is far from ideal. But hopefully you get the idea. What you see at any given level is designed in the family, and you choose what you see and what you don't see. So visibility settings. Well, I'm just keep looking at the clock and we are very close to finishing. So let's see if I can give you as many bonus tips as possible. First tip, choosing the right family. When we go File and New, Family, you have this huge array of different families available. Now, all of these have got different built-in behaviors, okay? Now, apart from the generic ones, okay, you notice up here we've got a whole batch of generic ones: base-based, floor-based, line-based, pattern-based, roof-based, and etc. Apart from these ones, once you choose one of these more specialized Revit templates, Revit family templates, if you find that when you go to use it in the project, it doesn't have the behavior that you expected, you can't just change it to a different template type, okay? So my recommendation here is, if you're using one of the more specific families, just draw a simple extrusion, load it into the project, and test it. Make sure that it has got the innate behavior patterns that you need from the family that you are creating, okay? Because you can't change its category. However, with the generic ones, you could actually start off with a generic model and then you can change its category. And the category, of course, aligns and is used when you create your schedules. So you could start off with a metric generic one, but then you could actually change its category to be family or electrical or furniture or some other category. And I'll just quickly show you how we do that. If I open up this one, you've got a button up here that says family, category and parameters. This is a generic model. If I wanted to schedule this, I would have to do a schedule based on generic models. However, look, you can actually change it to a different family category. Next tip. Just going to close this one and that one. When I select these families, I can't change the size of these. If I wanted to change the size of these on an instance just by stretching them to suit for your more generic families, here's what you'd need to do. You need to add an instance parameter. You add an instance parameter. Now, that means that I've got to do some modeling here. I'd need to bring this off. I use a line. I pick the edge of this item here, and I can see that this is locked. Check this one. See that this is locked, and you make it an instance parameter. So if I click here, I can add a parameter. Okay, I can add a parameter such as width. You make it an instance, which means you can individually, for each instance of this particular family, you can change them individually. Like so. Now I haven't set this one up completely, but the thing I want to show is when I load this into the project, overwrite the existing versions. Now when I select it, look, I've got grips and I can stretch this. It's now a stretchable item. And in fact, there's even over in the properties palette, it says width, and I can actually change this to a specific width. Now you notice when I was doing this, of course, the doors weren't moving around with it, and that's because when I drew these, I didn't lock and align all of the line work in place, but I certainly could have done that. And in fact, with the symbolic line work, when you set these up properly and you've used good reference planes, those doors would actually stretch and resize. And that's the kind of thing that we cover in our family creation course. Next tip, we're running out of time here. Keep it clean. Okay, when you've finished your project, clean it out. Go to the Manage tab and use your Purge Unused. And this obviously clears out anything that's not being used, and it helps reduce the file size, and that obviously keeps things nice and clean. General rule of thumb: when you're placing various bits of and making various pieces of equipment, avoid modeling any internal components that you won't see in the model. All you're doing is wasting time and making a file bigger than it is. So that would include if you're bringing in geometry from other, perhaps mechanical programs such as Inventor, etc. There could be lots of components in there that you really do not need in your family because they're never going to be seen. Therefore, they're not going to be used. Okay? Now, here's another tip regarding when you're making and adding parameters. Always place your dimensions to reference planes. I cannot overemphasize how important this is. When we're modeling elements and you're making parametric families, always measure to the reference planes. Do not measure and add dimensions and parameters directly onto 3D geometry. Otherwise, things will start going wrong. Okay, so as a baseline, always 99.9% of the time, there's always an exception to that rule, of course, but set up your parameters to the reference planes, and then all of your elements, that you're modeling, you lock sides of those elements to the reference planes. So when the reference planes move, models move. Last two quick tips, because unfortunately we are out of time. When you're modeling and you're making parametric models especially, every time you add something new, test it. It's what we call flexing the model. Okay, if I go ahead and just to go and open up some other example, let's have a look at this one. Every time you add a new parameter, test it straight away, one at a time. Don't add a parameter and add another one and add another one and add another one and then test it, and then you find that something breaks. Because otherwise you won't know which parameter is not working correctly. I cannot overemphasize this. We need to flex our model, flex our Revit muscles. Every time you add something new, test it straight away. Okay? Yes, it's a process. Yes, it might seem a bit of a chore, but you follow that process and you test it every time you add something new. It's going to save you a massive amount of time and headache trying to figure out where something is not working. And lastly, when you are thinking about making a Revit family, try and use the oldest version of Revit that you have got access to. If I show you my desktop here, you'll notice that I've got Revit 2019, and ideally I would always use the oldest version I've got access to, and that gives you the maximum amount of forward compatibility. Remember, Revit models, Revit families are not backwardly compatible. Therefore, you want to make them as available to as many versions as possible, so use the oldest version that you can for your families. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time and we have no more time on this. So I hope you found these tips useful and you've been able to go away with a couple of nuggets that are going to make your life a lot easier when you're making your families. So I thank you for your time today. I've been Greg Benson-Shettle. Please feel free to drop me a line if you have any specific questions at greg.benson-shettle@greytech.com, or feel free to connect with me over on LinkedIn. We've got lots more webinars coming up throughout the year, so keep an eye out if you found this one useful. Thank you very much. Now. There we are. I hope that was useful. And anybody got any questions? We've probably got about 3 or 4 minutes just before we close. If you have, please feel free to use the chat. And if you've got any questions about what we covered in this little excerpt, feel free to either chat now, or if you want to drop me a line, please feel free to email me. Okay. And we'll be able to answer you any of your questions or queries. And if you'd like to have more in-depth information regarding the creation of families and more advanced families, then obviously that's something that we provide training on. So thank you so much for turning up and taking this hour out of your time of your day. It's really appreciated. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much. I'll just keep an eye out to see if there's any questions coming up in the Q&A. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, actually, this CPD. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There'll be. Drop me an email. So, Poiter, if you yes, drop me an email and it's available. But also, you may find that it will be available via the links that you signed up for regarding the actual this webinar. You should find there's a clip there. If there's nothing obvious on the email that you received from the marketing department on there, drop me a line and I'll send you a link so you can view the recording. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.